Welcome, everybody. So, who makes websites? All right. And if you're making them for a client, you might have spent some time doing research into finding the right theme, right? And let's say it's maybe a little bit of a picky client. He really wants what he wants, but he'll know it when he sees it. So you spend a couple of hours finding it, and you're really finally sure you got it. Almost. Dang, it didn't work. Almost. So now what do? You spent hours looking for the theme that gets you most of the way there, but it's not all the way there. Now what? This is not overly reliable. I think I'm going to stand here. Well, you could curse and swear at the world, which if you work from a home office might be a reasonable thing to do, at least as an initial reaction. You could go to the trouble of finding a new theme, but you know that's going to be hours, and there's no guarantee that you're going to find exactly what you need and want. So the most productive solution really then is to customize that theme. To take the one that gets us most of the way there, and then we just have to carry it across the finish line. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to customize that theme just to get us across the finish line. So I know you're saying to yourself, how? Liam, how are we going to do that? Do you have any ideas on how we could do that? And I have one. It's called the Advanced Custom Fields plugin. Who's heard of this plugin? Excellent. And who uses this plugin? Awesome and awesomer and awesomest. Yes, 3 awesomenesses. That's great. So we're going to talk about the Advanced Custom Fields plugin today, and what we're going to do is we're just going to kind of begin to dip our toes into it to show you that while it can do amazingly complex functions and you can build really powerful, in-depth, scalable websites with it, you can also just do it to do a couple of small things to kind of get your head around its code, to get your head around the way it thinks, and to get your head around the way that you can customize the sites that you want to customize. So, first, let's get to know each other a little bit. Who's just learning WordPress? Awesome. First WordCamp? Super awesome. Welcome. I'm thrilled you're here. Who uses WordPress a lot for work? Okay. And is that because it's part of your job in that you're managing the website, or is it more because you make websites, deliver content for clients? So you kind of do it for client services. Who's on that side? Okay, excellent. So about a split there. Excellent. And within this group, who really wants to learn code? Who's here thinking, you know what, this whole user admin stuff is fun, but I want to level up a bit? Oh yeah, excellent, excellent, excellent. Well, good news, we got a little bit something for everybody. And I'm going a little bit quickly just to try to get on track and so that we're not at the end of the lunch queue. So before, again, we get right into the talk, I just want to spend just a few minutes about how you might want to pay attention to what I'm going to share with you today. Because I'm kind of going to talk at a number of different levels and a number of different points, and some of it might be below you and some of it might be beneath you, and I want you to try to hone in on what's going to be most of value to you. And so I just want to spend just a minute to think about how you might want to consider what I'm saying. So for those who wanted to learn code but don't really know it, you want to start to get your head around it, the Advanced Custom Fields plugin is a great way to get started. Because to be honest with you, it does most of the work, and we then just have to carry it across the finish line. It handles what I consider the more technical side of things, of integrating directly with the database, and then all we need to do is have the data come out of the database. And in my view, it's much easier to get data out of the database than to tell it to get in there. So this is going to help you with that. Now let's say you're providing WordPress-related services, whether you're a copywriter, you're a designer, you're a content generator, whatever it may be, and you don't want to code. That just doesn't get you excited in any way. This talk, this conversation, learning about the Advanced Custom Fields plugin is still going to be useful to you for a number of different reasons. First off, it will show you how things can be done. And the value of that is, aside from increasing your knowledge around your working environment, is it will enable you to talk more of the talk, even if you have no desire to walk the walk. So it'll help you engage with others and say, no, 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 we want to do this as part of the project. We want to maybe use this plugin. We want it to function in this way. So you don't have to know how that's going to happen, but you can at least know that that does happen, and that is a reasonable way for things to happen. Does that make sense? And then lastly, if you have no desire, maybe you're a business owner, you have no desire in actually learning anything about WordPress, and you're kind of here somewhat reluctantly because you appreciate you've got to do some sort of web-based marketing. What I'm going to share with you today will demonstrate that the little changes you need and or want don't have to cost an arm and a leg. They can be 2 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours. And yes, you want to pay for quality services to deliver that. You don't want to do anything too cheap. That gets more painful in the long run. But there's still value in that if you really don't want to know how it works, or you don't want to know how to do it yourself. You can still learn that not everything around building websites is hugely expensive. Does that make sense? Cool. So for the purposes of this talk, we're going to say that the default 2017 theme, which is available in the WordPress repository for free, gets us so close to where we want to be. That's really the theme, but we just have to tweak a couple of things on that to get it to be what we want to do. But in order to do that, of course, we have to start with a child theme. People aware of child themes? Yes? People not know what child themes are? Okay, you're in luck. Dun, 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 dun. So what a child theme does, and I'll let you read that somewhat homemade definition. It enables us, in effect, to say, tweak only what we want to tweak and leave everything else in place from the parent theme. So do what the parent does, except what the child wants to do. Does that make sense? And we want to keep the parent theme by itself alone. We want to use the child theme separately, mostly for security reasons. So if the parent theme that we're using has a security flaw in it, and the developer updates that, she fixes it, she pushes it out, and so then there's an update available. If we've made our edits in our parent theme and not in our child theme, that update will overwrite all the hard work we did. So we want to use a child theme. There's more links about learning about child themes on my website. Funnily enough, as a reminder, because this is about the time where I get the question, is any of this online? It already is. So who knows what a custom field is? Or who doesn't, maybe? Excuse me. So a custom field is a way to add a little bit more data, frankly, information, to the website. And it's a way to do it in a structured way, in an organized way, so we can find it later when we come back to it, whether it's a day later, 2 days later, or a month later. And it's a way that harnesses and enhances WordPress's power. So we're not trying to circumvent WordPress. We're not creating headaches for us down the road by kind of like, well, mostly I want to do this, but I'm just going to come over here and do this outside the system a little bit. It harnesses the system. It harnesses the power. So that as our site grows and it scales and we want to do more things, we're built solidly within the WordPress framework. Does that make sense? Okay, excellent. So how do we get started with the advanced custom fields? It's commonly referred to as ACF. So if you hear people in the hallway talking about ACF, that's what they're likely to be speaking of. And with most projects, as with most projects, whether it's expanding a website's functionality, redoing a kitchen, or even just creating a floral display for an upcoming party we're having, we have to know what we want to do before we do it, right? So if we're thinking we should add a bathroom off the kitchen, we should probably at the very least sketch that out, think about it a little bit before we just knock down that wall outside the kitchen. Because that might be, oh, we didn't want to do that. That's not the wall we wanted to knock down. So that's the first step with using the advanced custom fields, is really looking at the theme that you've chosen. The 2017 is our parent theme. What about that doesn't as accurately reflect the business needs or the brand or the scope of what we're trying to do, and how do we want to change that? And the best way to do that is to do that really offline, whether you're sketching it, whether or not you're using Photoshop, or you're doing some other kind of visual preparation beforehand, so that by the time you start to get into the technical work of updating the website, updating the code, adding more plugins, you already know what you need to do. Does that make sense? Okay. So our second step, once we already know what we want to do, is to install and activate the plugin. And that's a pretty standard operation. You can be done from within the WordPress dashboard. If you think of the navigation on the left side of the dashboard, it's plugins, add new, and then there's a search field in that page that loads, and you can just type in advanced custom fields. And you can click on the individual one, click on the download or install button, I believe it is, and then once it's installed, you can change it to activate. Go ahead, there's a question.
That comes up when you do that is the one that just says advanced custom fields and nothing else?
There are a number of related plugins for advanced custom fields, and I'll go back to, I want to show you the slide where I took the screenshot of this. So this is actually a screenshot of the WordPress repository where you can get the plugin. So as of yesterday or the day before, this is what it looks like. Does that make sense? So you'll see something akin to that in the window.
I guess the one that has like 1 million hits on it.
Yes, yeah, it's been downloaded a lot. Perfect, perfect. And for those that didn't hear, I'm sorry about the question was, how do you know which one it is when you go to install the plugin, when you go to search and install the plugin? Okay, so once we've installed it, we need to generate the content that we want to apply custom fields to. And this is my personal preference. This isn't an absolute, like, you must do it. You can add the custom fields first. But let's say, for the sake of argument, on your About page, you want to have a quote. And this is what I did in one of my examples. You want to have a quote and the name of the person that said that quote on the About page. Well, it's going to be easier to test if your code works if that About page already exists. So if you create that About page before you create the custom fields themselves, that's the way to do it. So populate the pages or the posts that you need for your project before you start to apply custom fields to them. And that'll make more sense as we get into a bit of the demo. Advanced custom fields plugin can work in widgets. You can put shortcode in a widget, but it will not do that out of the box. You'll have to add a tiny bit of code to what's called the functions.php file, and I'll show you how to do that in a little bit. Then once the plugin's running, we have it working in the widgets. We go actually into the settings of the plugin section within the WordPress dashboard itself, so dashboard, custom fields, and we begin to add the custom fields. Again, I'm going to get into a demo in just a minute, but that's our next step. And once all the custom fields are in place, so we have the data structure that we want, the next step is to actually then go to the About page, if you will, add the quote that we wanted, and add the name of the author. So we're populating those data fields. We're putting the information that we want displayed under the front site into WordPress so it gets into the database. And then lastly, we have to take some information from the settings page of the Advanced Custom Fields plugin and put it into the code on our child theme. We have to take some code that we get from the plugin itself and put it into our child theme. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Yes? Go ahead, question.
How important is it for you to back up your website?
Yeah, so the question was, how important is it to back up a website before you start adding the Advanced Custom Fields plugin? Very. And that's more a reflection of best practices than any concerns around the advanced custom fields. Anytime you're starting to make significant changes to your database and database structure, you definitely want to take a backup beforehand. Good question. So I guess that would have been like step A before step 1, so thank you. Go ahead.
We were showing beginners that we should look at the versions of our whatever theme that we're using first to any of the plugins. And I'm missing that piece of information. When you're talking about this or plugging in something in here, what am I looking at if we're talking about possibly having something crash?
So that is a good question, and I'm going to answer it briefly in the interest of time, and we can talk about it more afterwards. I just don't want to hold everybody up. But yeah, you're absolutely right. If you're buying themes or you're using a child theme and you don't know its provenance, that can be a significant issue, and so you'll want to look into that. Some of the things that you can check, we're using the 2017 theme, so aside from the fact that the designer who made that is fantastically talented, it is the default offering from WordPress, the community, and it's been looked over by many, many developers who are much more intelligent than I. So we know that's fine because it comes with fine, outstanding provenance. If you're getting it from somewhere else, then you will want to look at that and see on the theme itself is what version is it compatible with from WordPress standpoint. But
I noticed the plugins, they all say they're compatible.
Right. Advanced Custom Fields, you'll notice, has something like 1 million installs. It's made by a chap named Elliot Condren, and he makes his living off of this. So when things within WordPress change, Elliot changes accordingly. So it's a very reliable plugin. Yep. Okay. Demo time. All right. Now, a little bit earlier, this was giving me a little bit grief around, I want to mirror displays. So hang on just a sec. Come on, it should be up there. Yep, I just can't get up there because I have it down. There we go. All right. Can we see that okay? So you can see that this is just running on my local computer, and I'm logged in. And I've tweaked a little bit, and I'm going to show you my process here in the interest of time is to show you kind of step by step what decision I made about what I wanted to change and then how I changed it. And then I'll get through as many of those as we can before we run out of time. But just prior to that, remember that I said that we wanted to add that little bit of code to the functions.php file to enable the ACF widget to work. So we're just going to come over to that. And here's our functions file. And this is all we need. 15, 16, 17. These forward slashes are just a comment. So when you access my code online in a Bitbucket repository, this is just giving you some guidance as to what this does. So this is all you need to add to your functions.php file. So it's pretty quick. It's pretty easy. If you have it in your child theme, again, that's getting outside the scope of this talk, but you just open your functions file in your child theme and whack-a-doodle, chicken noodle it right in, save it, and you're good to go. Does that make sense? All right. So let's go to our services page. And what I wanted to do on this is two different things. I wanted to add a little tagline, a little work ethic line, just below the heading of the page. And then I also wanted to list the two people that work for this company, and I wanted to link their names to their email addresses. So if you were to click on Tom's name or Juanita's name, I don't use mail, but you can see it pops that up. So that's what I wanted to do. Those were the decisions I made that I wanted for this page. So clearly I already have the services page. And then the next step was to come down to custom fields, and I'm just gonna, I never quite remember how to make it go out. Here we go. I'm gonna come down to custom fields. And I've already created these, so I didn't have to do it just now. But if we look at them, oh, I'm sorry, I wanted to jump into the other one first. Our team is what I wanted to show you. They're really pretty simple and straightforward. The field label, name of person number 1. Email address of person number 1. Name of person number 2. Email address of person number 2. Now there are more advanced ways to do this, but for the purpose of this demonstration, I kept it really clean and simple. And so I saved all of this and I added it. And then if we scroll down together, we can see that I set some rules up. When should this show up? Well, it should show up if the page is our services. So it will show up on the WordPress dashboard on the admin side. These fields that I've created will show up on the services page. So when I come to the service page and I go to edit it and I scroll down, we can see we have these extra fields. Name of person 1, email address of person 1, name of person 2, email address of person 2. 5 minutes, okay. The little red star means required. You can choose whether or not to make them required or not. I'm just going to jump into the code now so that at least we can get one full one out of the way. Content page. Yep, okay, here we go. So what I did with this is I got the page from the parent theme, the PHP page from within the parent theme that controls where page content comes out of the database and into the browser that our visitors can see, and I copied that page and I put it into my child theme. And that way, because it's in my child theme, it will overwrite what's in the parent theme. And then I just added this bit of code. So it says adds the team members and their email addresses to the services page. So if we can see, this little bit of code says our team, and I even typed that up by hand, right? And if we come back to the front end of our services page, we can see it says our team, right? So the code is working. It's going to the front end. And if we come back to the code again, we see we have a paragraph tag, right? That really simple HTML that says make a paragraph. Here's a link tag that says, and then this is pulling the information from the database. And the name of the field, this email address number 1, I know I'm jumping between things quickly, but I want to come and show you this, this is where we get it. This email address number 1, we just copy that. That's the technical name, if you will. That's the information, the name that the code wants so that it can go to the database and get the information that we want. Does that make sense? So we copy it from within the dashboard, and while we're writing this relatively simple code, and all of mine's available so you can have access, we put it right in here. And then we just, in get field is the name of the individual, name of person 1. We use a little break tag, and that puts Juanita's name below Tom's. And we just repeat it, but we include information for number 2. Does that make sense? Does that seem pretty simple, pretty easy? Ish? Well, that's the first step. Yes, of course, writing it is going to always be harder. But if we can understand the concept and the steps and the process, then we can start to get our head into the code itself. Okay. I'm going to ask the video chap at the back, are we allowed to stay longer, or are we going to get in trouble if we do? I'm realizing lunch starts. I'm happy to stay and keep talking through the other examples, but I want those who want to go eat the opportunity to leave. Is it okay if we stay and keep going?
Yeah, you can stay. It is 12:30 if they want to go eat lunch.
Yeah, exactly. If people want to leave, that's great. I'm happy to keep talking this. People want me to keep talking? Are you learning? Do you want me to keep going? Okay, I'll keep going. I won't be offended if you lose lunch. Leave for lunch, though. Okay. So let's just have a quick look at this little tagline that we made, that we wanted to put on our services. It's our services. I'm just going to go in here. You can see it's just a single field. And if we click on editing the field, we can see that there's various fields that we have to fill in. And these fields within the custom field settings section are put there by the plugin itself. So we don't have to make all of these. So when we type in a field label, services tagline, something descriptive, so that when we come back to it later or we read our code, it doesn't say like field number 1, because that's not going to tell us anything, aside from the fact that we did not name our fields well. And then we can choose. We have all sorts of different types of fields. And I'm not going to read through all of these, but if you look at the list, you can see that there are a wide variety of options. So you really do have some flexibility and some power as to how you want this to work. You can have some field instructions, so those will show up on the WordPress side, on the dashboard, so that when your client logs into their site, you can tell them, put your phone number here, or put the phone number of staff number 2 here, or whatever it is that you're asking them to complete. Again, I said earlier that you can make it required or not. You can have default values, so if they don't add anything, it will put it in there. So maybe, for example, if Juanita just joined the company and she doesn't have an email address, the default value we just have info at the company name, so at least there's some email connected to her name and people can send an email. And it won't necessarily go directly to her, but somebody can get it to her. Does that make sense? Placeholder text is, again, just what's there. Sometimes you can use placeholder text to offer guidance on the admin side. Prepend or append is pretty simple and straightforward. It does what it says. You can put things at the front of it or after it. You can choose formatting. So do you want to let people use HTML or not in your tags? Character limit can be helpful for like phone numbers, so they don't accidentally type in 11. And conditional logic. Conditional logic in this setting is sort of a if this, then that. So if people have an email address, we know that they're also going to have, maybe the company says, if you get an email address, you also get a direct fax number. So it says if they have an email address, then they have to fill out their fax number too. It's kind of a weird example because not many people get individual fax numbers, but that's just kind of the concept, is it's conditionally dependent on what they put into the field. Does that make sense? Okay. Am I going too quickly? Yeah. Okay. So again, this is all in place. If we come back to editing the page itself, we see we have it's right there. I'll flag up there. We noticed, do you remember when we did the names and the email addresses, they were at the bottom, right? And there's a setting within the advanced custom fields. Towards the bottom, excuse me, where, yeah, you can control where on the admin side of a page, where the custom fields sit. And you can imagine if you're adding custom fields for, like, say, an apartment listing website, where you're going to have a lot of custom fields. Number of rooms, location, street, floor, etc. These kinds of fields, like where are we going to put the data that they have to fill in? Where do we put that information? How do we control the layout of the dashboard side? Becomes much more important. Our site's really simple. It's not a huge issue. And then we can also, if we scroll to the bottom, see that we can hide some things. So that just like we're adding custom fields to enabling people to use the website to put in the information that we want them to use, we can also hide it so that they can't add information that we don't want them to use or that the website's not going to display. Make sense? Okay. And then if we come back to our code, we can just scroll up. You can see this is all on the same page here. And this little bit of code here adds our tagline to the services page. We have our little comment that says, add the tagline. I appreciate it's hard to read gray on gray. But then it says, if we filled out this tagline, let's go ahead and display it in the browser. So it's a very short amount of code that, frankly, if this is the kind of thing you like to do, it becomes part of your design style, you can use this code over and over and over. So let's say you liked the 2015 theme and you wanted to use a child theme of that, you could take this code and put it in that in some way as well. So it's transferable.
You can use that only on the theme page, or can do that also on the homepage?
You can use it anywhere on the site effectively. It all is just, what is the code to put it there? And where do you put the code within your templates? I'll show you that just briefly here. If we look at the side, you can see these different fields. And this file and this file are required to create a child theme. This folder and subfile, this folder, and in these two subfolders, I'm sorry, in these two subfiles are what we need to put content on to the pages we're talking about, and a couple of other places that I'm going to get into in a second. But if you want it on the home page, you could do it on the page, but you could also, there's a front page template that you might put it in there. It kind of depends on how you wanted to go about that. Does that make sense? Okay. So, if we look at the About Us, I said that we might want to add a quote and the person who said it. And I'm a little embarrassed that my ability to Google quotes about Miami turned up nothing better than something by Ric Flair, the wrestler from the 80s. But then I thought it was kind of appropriate. They were kind of doing an 80s theme here. So that's what Ric Flair thinks about Miami. So again, our process was, what do we want it to do? We just want to add a quote, and we want to add the person who said it. We already have our plugin installed. We come back to our custom fields, About Us quote, and we look at it. We've got the quote and the quote author. And if we look at the quote, we can see we chose text area, which gives us a box rather than just a single line. And I didn't want to let any HTML in there. I didn't want somebody to create their own bold or their own italic or something like that. And the quote author is even simpler. It's just a text field. And then I said the way the page is equal to About Us. Pretty simple. So then if we come back and we edit our page, so now we're looking at it, and if this was the first time, we would go ahead and pop that quote in, and we type in Rick's name. And it would be good. So then if we look at our code, again, this is all in our content page. Just see where I put that. Is that the quote? So a little bit of PHP. We add the comment really for our own self, so we know what our code is doing. And then, again, if you remember when we looked at the quote in the advanced custom field side of things, it gave us that little bit. So we would have copied that from the advanced custom field settings page and popped it in here. And then the other one is the quote author. Make sense? Question?
So if you set up a custom field the way you showed us in the admin interface, but you don't add this line of code, the worst thing that's going to happen is it just won't show up.
Correct. It will sit in the database all by itself, wondering why I can't play with the other children on the front end of the site. But nothing bad. Thank you. But you can see that even if you don't know how to do this, this is a tiny amount of code. And putting this together, now I know how to do this. I haven't done it in a while at this level. This took maybe an hour or two to figure out what edits I wanted to make, what fields did I need, and then add it to the code. So even if you don't know how to do this, you don't want to know how to do this, you have to pay somebody, you're talking just a couple of hours of time. So it's not we have to rebuild everything. Okay. So let's go to the front end of the site here. I'll show you the contact page. So what I wanted to do for this is these are actually all custom fields. They're not sitting in the content section of the website. You can see that there is no content section. There are just these custom fields.
So does this advanced content plugin, does it have just like a whole bunch of, like a whole menu of different fields that you could use? Or?
No, it's more that you make your own fields. So if you kind of think of it maybe as ingredients for baking, and let's say you have ingredients for cookies, and whether or not you choose chocolate chip or oatmeal raisin or sugar or fortune cookies or whatever, the ingredients are all, you just need the ingredients and then you choose what you want to do. And that's kind of what Advanced Custom Fields does, is you can create whatever you want. If you want to create a field that requires a phone number, you create a field that requires a phone number. And so in that sense, yes, those parts are already built into it. But how it gets from the database onto the front end, you've got to do yourself.
So instead of a business name field and a business address field, it just has a free text form.
Yes, and then you say, I want to make this a business name field, and I want to apply it in this way, on that page in this way.
So it has free forms drop down.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly, exactly.
So if you wanted a field to store quantity, or you wanted a field to store age, those would be numeric fields. Right.
In this case, why would you do this? Isn't there a contact us page that just does that too?
That's a very good question, and I will show you why. I will show you why.
Can you repeat that again?
Yeah, so the question was, on a contact page, why would you bother using custom fields? Why wouldn't you just use maybe the main content section of a WordPress page and type in the address information? And the simple answer is once it's in here, it's in its own field, and we can take that information, we can take that data and display it anywhere in the site that we want. And that way, when we type the address in correctly here, when it shows in the footer, it's the same. And when the office moves, we change it one place. That's why we want to do it. Exactly, exactly. We type it once, and then we push it wherever we want. So in the footer, I created a widget, and then I put the information, this phone number, and this email address in the footer. So when we get off the contact page, we go to the about page, we said, man, I love Ric Flair. I can't wait to work with these people. How do I find them? Oh, I'm going to email or call them right now. Does that make sense? So, again, we would have created all of these fields. Are people comfortable with this? Should we skip this step? Do you want to go through this? Want to look at this? So if you look at our contact details, happy to go through it. Again, it's logical naming. Business name, business address line 1. I mean, if we're not using personal addresses, do you need business? No, probably not. Address line 1. 2, city, state, zip, phone, and email address. And we tell it, be available on the contact page. And I've already showed you that we'd fill in that. And then if we come to our contact page, could probably just search and go up and down. But here are the business details, and I'm just going to give ourselves a little bit more room. So adds the business address, details, and contact. So it's business name, address 1, address 2, city, state, zip, phone, email address. Make sense? So then what we can do, because we enabled widgets, is we can come to WordPress, a dashboard, go to the widgets, go down to footer 1, and we have this simple little, I'll highlight it there. We're just using shortcodes. ACF field. Again, this should look familiar to us now, right? We just copy that out. Now, because we're using a widget, we have to give WordPress some kind of reference as to where to find that data. So not just what is the field, but where is it located? Where can we get it? So we were pulling it from post ID 4. And the post ID 4 is the ID of the contact page. Does that make sense? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come to the pages. I'm just going to leave that open for just a minute. I'm going to pop over here, come to pages. Oh, of course, it's not going to show up. Now it is. It's a little hard to see down here, but if you were looking at your own computer screen, you'd be able to see it. You see I'm hovering over Contact Us, and you look in the bottom, where you see the web address of where that link is going to go to. People familiar with that? And then you come across post equals, it's hard to see, it's 4. So that's what I did. I said, what ID is that contact page? It's 4. So then I just come back here, and I can then fill out this information, post_ID equals 4, because it's pulling that from the contact page. That make sense? Pretty cool? Yeah, it is. It's totally cool. Okay. So what else did we do? We talked about this. We did contact. We did about us. So news and updates. We can also apply things to posts. And so my rule that I wanted to do is anytime I've written a post about a talk I'm going to give, I wanted to add a bit of information about where you could see it. So this information right here, see Liam's talk, is custom fields. And this is in red because that's my default test to make sure that my child theme is working. I just write a little code that says H1, make them red. And that way I know my child theme is working. So let's talk about how do we get this type of information to show up only on posts that are in the category of speaking. And I'll take us to another post just to show you that they're not. This is a really wonderful blog post. And it's just in news. And we can see that it doesn't have anything about seeing my next talk, right? But if we go to a simple way to customize your website, you can see it talks about today. So if we start with our custom fields, speaking posts, date of talk, time of talk, track of talk, right? And this is where we change it up a little bit. We say when the post taxonomy category is equal to, well, let's do speaking. So that's what we chose. Then apply this custom field. So you could apply actually different custom fields. If you do WordCamp talks and you write recipes, you could have different fields appear on the recipes posts. You could do whatever you want. So then if I come to edit this post, see here's the post, and these fields I just fill them in. That make sense? And I populated these within the advanced custom fields section. So I just looked at the WordCamp Miami website and came up with all the other ones.
Radio list.
Yeah. And advanced custom fields would allow us to make it a radio button, or we could do a multiple select, or those options are available within advanced custom fields. So now then it just only gets applied to that category. So then if we look at the code, so see it's a slightly different template. So I had to grab this template out of the parent theme, copy it into the child theme. Here's our code. Adds talk details to posts in the speaking category. These if statements where it says if get field, that's just checking to make sure that we filled in that field. So it's just double checking our work. This echo statement, I'll take that out. That's me playing around with things. I forgot to delete my own test comment. Sorry about that, folks. But then you could say here, it says echo. There's a paragraph tag. Strong is just bold. See Liam's talk. Closes the bold. Brings in the date. At. Brings in the field for time. In the track. And that's all we had to add. And it does it. And then there's a little else statement that says, if it's not in a speaking category, just do what the theme normally does. Does that make sense? It's that simple. Conceptually, it's very simple. I appreciate there's a lot of code and a little bit of characters there, and you're not used to writing that and reading that, and that's okay, but conceptually, it's really simple. What's that? So the documentation, and I've got links on my site about this, but the documentation within the Advanced Custom Field plugin itself is very, very good. And you can also just kind of Google it Not that you want to necessarily trust every bit of code you find on the back of a Google search, but you know, it's kind of just like learning a new language. When you're learning Spanish or some other language, it's you kind of take what you know, and then you build on that, and you try it, and you test it, and you see it, and you come to WordCamps, and you come to meetups, and you learn more that way. And this is very much just getting started. And you can make very, very advanced things. This is all for free, and the Advanced Custom Fields does have paid add-ons that build on the functionality. But this is just kind of enough to get you started. Question?
When you set up a custom field, one of the settings is formatting.
Yeah.
Or you can select just plain text or HTML. Is there any concern with allowing HTML, like in terms of SQL injection or any other?
Yeah. I mean, there is. But hopefully the people on the site that you're building aren't going to inject their own site with malicious code, right? That doesn't mean it can't happen. But yes, there are, and that's just pushing the data in. So yeah, there are some filters and some catches for that. There are some concerns around that, yes. And that's where this kind of stuff where it says ESC, escape URL, is kind of trying to address some of that concern.
But none of that is open to the visitors, right? So it's only open to the administrators.
Right. Well, thank you, folks. I appreciate it. And I'll be here for at least a couple, not here, but I'll be here for a few more hours. So if you have questions, just catch me in the hallway, please. Thanks so much.
Thank you.